Okay, going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And would the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Brennan,
Here.
Counselor Kane,
Present.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Here.
Counselor Gilat, Counselor Lavin,
I'm here.
Counselor Gameau,
Here.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Here.
Counselor Whitfield, Mayor Cicery.
Here. All right, welcome everyone. I'm pretty sure the majority aren't here for the disaster relief discussion. I'm just going to go on a limb on that. We do have an agenda this evening. We are adding, as an adjustment, a public comment period. It's not on the agenda, but there certainly will be a public comment period for which 4 people have signed up. We are going to go through a few things tonight. We did make some changes for this meeting so we could have it tonight. We made the changes because of the feedback we got from many of those in the city in terms of the reassessment notices they received, as well as some of the background that the council has as it relates to this. We're going to talk more about that. We do have a few things for our regular agenda we do need to go through. So I'm going to ask you to just be patient with that, as we do actually have first the disaster emergency declaration that we're going to talk through first. Then we're going to go into the assessment. All right. So unless any of you want to talk or hear, we want to talk a lot about that. It should only be a couple of minutes. Okay. Any other comments with regard to the agenda from council? Okay. So the first item is on the agenda is requesting a New York State disaster emergency declaration for the 2026 Finger Lake storm, flooding, high water, shoreline, and infrastructure damage. And there is in this a proposed resolution. And just to describe this in layman's terms, I think also it's sort of ironic if you think about it. The high rise in the water levels of Seneca Lake as it relates to all these storms have caused significant damage along the lakefront area as well as other parts of the city. So much so that in our last meeting, Director Joe Venuti gave an overview for us in terms of the impact of that, and it's nothing less than significant. What he shared with us is a high-level estimate of anywhere from $3 to $4, possibly $5 million in terms of repair costs for the damages done by the flood. That is not insignificant. As a matter of fact, if you think about our budget, which is about $22 million, I'm going to put this into context for you. That's about 18%, right? If you take New York City's budget, and yes, I'm going to pick on New York City, if you take their budget for this year, which is about $115 billion, and you apply that percentage to it, that's a $2 billion hit. If that were to occur, you'd have world news going on. You'd have aid coming in from all sources, all different sorts of places. So as we talked about this, with a budget that's already constrained, that we need to go and make sure that Albany hears, that the region hears the impact of this, and that we want the city to work very closely, very diligently to do what it can to see if we can't get aid or attention that helps us deal with these expenses. Because otherwise, it falls on us one way or shape or form or another. So I wanted to make that clear. That's what this is for. The resolution tonight that was put together makes that call and articulates that. So there's a briefing memo in here with regard to it, and there's the resolution to it. So I'm going to tee that up first. And I think we start with, if someone wants to propose or to, motion to adopt the resolution, and then we'll open the discussion.
So
Councilor Lavin, seconded by Councilor Petropoulos. Okay. Let's start with a discussion on this, and I think it's also helpful for the city manager to give us an update because such much as has transpired since then.
Do you want me to start with the update?
Yes, please.
So the only update I have is the lake levels have receded some, which is positive because now we can actually get those engineering estimates. And so we have contracted with an engineering firm to find out what the true damages are. I think one of the challenges, known as the lake trout capital of the world, our boat launch is currently closed at a time when the trout derby is happening. We are reviewing that daily to see if we'll be able to open it for Memorial Day weekend. You will also see at the lakefront there are still several areas that people cannot use. Some of those areas will likely be closed for the entire summer season due to the significance of the damages that have occurred due to those weather events. As far as this emergency declaration, this urges the state for their declaration. There's time limitations on all of those things, and we've been working with our consultant that helps us with disaster recovery as well.
Comments, questions? You can during the public comment period. Counselors, comments? It's all right. Counselor Lavin.
Your Honor, this may just be because I'm getting old and grouchy, but I do think this is another one of those things. I've dealt with FEMA before, and it can be like knocking your head against a wall and then stopping and finding out that it still hurts. And I think that with you here, your strong voice, both this and the other things we're requesting from the state, we're still waiting to figure out why Wayne and Yates County can can charge for use of the short-term rentals, and we're not. And we just, get a lot of this. We're going to have to find a way to be more publicly disappointed in the state's reaction to some of these things. I know FEMA's federal, but it's the same thing. They sort of, you can ask whether it's worth the effort after you put the manager through what it takes to get something out of them here. So I think it needs both a campaign
Yep.
and a strong thing like this.
Sure, and I view this as a start. This is a
Yeah,
start of,
yeah.
we got the news in, last council meeting. By this council meeting, we have a resolution. This is the start of at least the voice that we hope joins into a chorus
Yeah.
of others who are affected the same way. And from that chorus comes action. Because I think if all of us have found, and I guess I try not to share that view, I unfortunately do. And I agree with you. So this is the first effort to raise this, get it to our legislatures, get it to the county, and really to start to build that chorus of voices here, because it can't just be us. Too many pictures. The Senate Lake Pure Waters Association, who will also be notified of this, is already calculating the damages throughout the region.
Yeah.
So the more we get that together, the more of a case we have to see if we can attain some sort of action. Councilor Gummo, sorry, one quick thing.
Have you heard anything from other municipalities like Watkins Glen? Are they doing the same?
So what I've heard from other municipalities, some were not affected, some were. There are targeted areas that appear to be affected up and down Seneca Lake, and in particular on the north side, hence us. So really it's concentrating in that zone of both public and private damage, of which there's significant damage.
Anything from the state yet on the state park damage management?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Go ahead.
I will say just a couple things to add to this. To your point, Councilor Lavin, working with FEMA can be very difficult and challenging, especially when they're not in office for extended periods of time right now. We are finally realizing some of our damages from 2022. So that is not an easy process, and I am sure Director Venuti can tell you about his half-day Thursday phone calls since that time period with those representatives. Another piece to this is there are ways for us to acknowledge these damages and significant events locally first, and so I think that's another way to be cognizant. And we also have the Seneca Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, SWIO, who we are members of, and then Pure Waters, which is a separate body, but closely linked, that we'll be working through. As the mayor pointed out, being on the north end, not often do we get south winds that make the lakefront look the way that it does. And there have been some really interesting pictures shared by the community, but that does also mean that most of the damages seem to be on our lakefront and with the state park as well.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Petropoulos.
So I'm looking here, it's approximately 3 million to 5 million. Is there a chance it could be like way more, given the,
Potentially. So again, because the water levels have been so high, some of the damages are occurring in the steps that go into the water, which when the waters start to recede, all of the gravel underneath is getting pulled out. That's also one of the reasons why we don't have a beach on the north end, is because once you create that beach, it washes away. If you were to have, which I know many residents would like that sand beach, but we would lose sand regularly. So we can't actually get in the water to assess the damage underneath yet. I will turn to the assistant city manager, who has been working on this with her buildings and grounds crew as well.
Yeah, and regularly we actually we're not allowed to do any in-water work until June 30th. That's a common occurrence that happens every year, but that obviously limits us as well for the assessment period.
Yes, so there's national waterways rulings, and so we have to be out of the water during certain times due to bird migration and fish migration. So that's another component to all of this, which makes it a bit more challenging. I believe our kickoff meeting, though, for the next phase of the study, which will show us hopefully more of the damages, is anticipated for next week.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Have we heard anything from Seneca County? Since our water is in Seneca County?
Nothing as of yet.
Because, I mean, anything we do, we're probably going to have to coordinate with them.
Yes, we would.
Okay. Anything else? Councilor Petropoulos?
real quick, is water quality affected? And if so, was that a no?
No, it has not been affected for our
Okay.
water that's throughout the city.
Good enough, thanks.
Okay. All right. Do please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Counselor Kane?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Gamow?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Mayor Sistery?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. On to the next section, unless if everyone wants to leave after that conversation. So welcome again. When we do the public, you can. Just wait 1 second, please. Yeah. I'm going to tee up here the reason you're here tonight. And look, I'm going to make a few acknowledgments. We'll then, and cover some points. We'll then go into public comment, and we'll then go into the presentation and discussion in detail as it relates to the assessment of the process. So first, what I really want to thank all of you for being here. Whether you're angry, you're worried, you're anxious, you are in the right place. This is where you should be, to express to us and to the city what it is you're feeling, thinking, and sensing as it relates to what you received in the mail and what possibly some of your neighbors, family, and friends have experienced as it relates to the reassessment, these preliminary reassessment notices. And I want to make sure to be clear that I want to also thank both City Manager Hendricks and City Assessor Tina Rados for being here, and to identify and state very clearly that they and city staff are here to do a job. They are doing their job. We support them in that job and in that role. And our goal here is to understand and to learn, I think all of us collectively, what is it that went into this process? What is it that was communicated? What should we expect? What are next steps? And identify what this council can and can't do. Because there are certainly things that this council can and can't do. And I'd point out to the very process that brought us here tonight that we received, I think it was May 4th, notification that there was going to be letters going to print, and that there are three things that we should be aware of, as well as some descriptions as it relates to this assessment. What we did not get, as an example, is a presentation on the methodology, a presentation on the impact, a presentation on the elements and the components that go into what an assessment is, so that we could start the process of understanding and communicating, so that both council and the public could be aware in terms of what was coming. I view this as a failure in terms of governance, or a failure of governance, or a governance process. And I view it as our duty here to learn and listen tonight, not out of anger or angst. And I encourage you, please, not to act in anger and angst, but to act in terms of understanding of what we can and can't do, what your rights are as a citizen, as a taxpayer, that you do have a formal grievance process, and there is the ability to do that. And I can say with absolute certainty that the assessor's office has been very busy because I sit next to her. And she has been very busy. That all counselors here have been very busy listening and hearing from you and from many in the city as it relates to this. So I just want to make sure that we understand that first. We're going to learn tonight collectively. Then we're going to talk about, after the public hearing and the public comments, we're going to have the presentation, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see and talk about what we can and can't do. And I believe there are some things we'll be able to do and express tonight. But this is a process. This is the beginning. Nothing is going to change tonight. We're not positioned to do that. We're positioned to listen and understand. So I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. All right? So having said that, I will turn it over to the public comment period, open it up to the public comment period. Again, I think you've heard some of the parameters already. There are only 4, and then if anyone else wants to speak, they certainly can. You're held to 3 minutes. Obviously, it's appreciated if you come in under. But with that, please focus, come right to the point, make your statement. This is not a forum, by the way, to grieve your assessment. We don't make that call. The assessor does. But if there are comments you want to make with regard to the process, anything along those lines, it's probably more appropriate. So to that end,
Can we get the guy for the waterfront first?
yeah,
Right? You wanted to,
yeah.
just go over to,
This will be quick, because I wasn't for Mr. Venuti's here the last thing. And,
Oh, nope, right over there.
well, is the sign done? Hello? I wasn't here for Mr. Venuti's thing.
Could you state your name, please? State your name and ward.
Art DiCaro, William Street, Second Ward.
He's first on the list.
I used to be on the zoning board with Mr. Ciceri when
Yes.
he was out of college.
Way back when. I
Way,
do
way
remember
back,
that.
long time ago. I wasn't sure you remembered me. Anyway, the first part I want to say is about the water thing. $5 million.
Go over to the microphone.
By coincidence, I was at the lakefront yesterday. I walked up and down there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Gorgeous down there. And the water is high. I grew up half a mile from there on State Street. And it's so much beautiful more now than it used to be back then. But $5 million worth of damage. Now, the beach isn't our concern, is it? It's not in the city of Geneva. Okay. The only part that's in the city of Geneva, I think, would be where the 2 docks that you said, the 2 boat docks. And I can see the water's high and it's pushing some of the wood off. Okay, they got to be replaced. $5 million. That's I mean, you could put a beautiful house on there for beautiful boathouse. And I don't know, we're not talking about personal property, are we? Or are we just talking about the city property?
city.
Just the city. There's no $5 million worth of work on that. Unless we're trying to get money from the state, then okay, I agree with you guys. If you can get whatever you can get from Hochul, fine. But if that's what we're doing, fine. But if, as far as $5 million, and Mr. Petropoulos said, could it be more? I don't even know how you get to 1 million. I don't know how you get to 50,000. You know, I know there's concrete there that may be damaged. I see that's blocked off. $5 million? Like I said, if we're trying to beat the state up, fine. But other than that, there's no $5 million worth of damage. Because I don't know where the damage is on the other one. If you go from the docks to, you know, the other way towards the ice cream place, I don't know. Are we responsible for the docks that the hotel has that they use? I mean, the hotel's
Yeah.
got that. We're responsible for that. That's our docks. Okay. And I walked.
You have
on
about
the-
a minute, Mr. DeCarlo. I don't know if you want to talk about the assessments as well.
Yeah, I do.
You have about a minute left.
I'll be quick. That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I just want to say this $5 million. And I did walk down the long pier, and there's wood alongside. I mean, it's driftwood and stuff. I think if you got a boat, you could probably pick that up in a day or two. I don't think it's $5 million. But if you guys want to beat the state up, fine. I'm 100% for it. But if we're going to spend $5 million out of these guys' taxpayers, we got enough problems tonight. We don't have to worry about the $5 million. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Just, I think $5 million is out of whack, unless you're trying to beat the state up. That's fine.
Okay. Thanks, Art. Appreciate it. Okay.
Daniel Paolo?
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
My writing's not good.
Good to see you again.
Right-
Yes.
Right up there with my public speaking.
Okay.
I'm Daniel DiPolito. I'm here this evening to I basically have a question I wanted to ask the assessor about the process, if that's permitted.
So the way this works, you direct them to us, no one
Okay.
responds, but what we'll do is take it down and we will present that question on your behalf during the
Thanks.
presentation as a point of order.
My question is, if I were to grieve by unequal assessment, what do we use for comparisons? That's the first part of it. And what about the ratios of comparable properties from the same assessment roll? That's really the basis of my question.
Could you say the last one again, please?
Yes, what about the ratio of comparable properties from the same assessment roll? Yeah, a higher percentage of value. And I'm
Got
sure
it.
the assessor will have a good understanding of that.
Yes.
All right, thank you very
Got it.
much.
No, thank you. Appreciate it, Daniel. Lisa, it's you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Petrocarlo. I live in Geneva. I've been a vocal advocate for Geneva for the over 20 years that I've lived here. I love Geneva. In my workplace, publicly, I support things that the people, the businesses, everybody, the activities that make Geneva special. But lately, it's harder and harder to support what's happening in our city. Geneva population has declined by 3.6% since 2020, and it's an ongoing trend that's about 0.6 annually. We're not seeing growth. We're not Victor. I was surprised to see that I'm one of only 49% of the people who live in their own home here in Geneva. My question is, who and what drives the decision to reassess our homes when we've just done this 2 years ago? As a homeowner, is this what we can expect, that every 2 years we're going to have a new assessment? For example, I did the research. I looked at all the information the assessor sent. I can look across my street. There's a newer home than mine that has double the size. The lot's bigger than mine. It's 50 years newer, and yet it's assessed $40,000 less than my home. On my street alone, properties were increased from 40% to 105%. The numbers, the evaluations don't add up. It's inequitable and seems very confusing. And I would like some information about who drives decisions of when we do assessments. And as a homeowner, is this what we can expect, to have this happen every 2 years as homeowners in Geneva?
Thank you. Jack O'Donnell?
Jack O'Donnell, live in Geneva. And just a couple of questions on one thing for the comparison that's on the website. Would it be possible to put in the house type, colonial, old style, or whatever, to do it easier sort? That's one thing in there. On the sales, I can do that, but when I can't do it with the comparison on the from year to year. The second is New York State recommends 3 to 5 years for reassessments, not 2 years, okay? Which puts the burden on us. And were all properties reassessed? Because when I look at the comparative or the listing, properties old to new, not all properties are listed there. So was this, what was the process? Why were some not assessed higher when you look? Majority of people, I think it was, you mentioned it was like over 38% increase of property values or whatever. So there are properties that are not listed on that list. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Kevin. My last name's Wee. I've been living in Geneva for almost 30 years. I have many properties in Geneva. My question here is, if our assessment keep going up, are we driving our residents away? And number two is, everybody know that Geneva's rental is pretty expensive. Most of my houses, I try to keep it under 1 bedroom. I try to keep it under 800. 2 bedroom, I try to keep it 1,000. 3-bedroom, I keep it under 1,200. But I can't make money out of it. I am a businessman. And if our taxes or assessment keep going up, I'm thinking about getting out of Geneva. I'm getting sick of it, tired of it. I have one smallest houses, one house is on Cherry Street. It's the second highest assessed value on Cherry Street. It's the second smallest house. Sorry, that's it.
Thank you. Second, yep. You already had your 3. That's, Art, that's what I was warning you. You had a minute. Get to the other topic. Art, let me let the other folks go, and then let's see, all right? If you could, yes, come on up.
Hello, my name is Lynn Sosnowski. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering which ward I belong to, but I live on Larchmont Street off of North. I do have a couple of statements. First and foremost, I echo the question about why the reassessment occurred with such rapidity following the previous one. The second one is I found the letters to be not necessarily clear as to where the grievance should be sent. It just said to assessor, but there was no information whether to drop it off, whether there's a mailbox here. If I bring it here and no one is in the office, where do I leave my grievance? Another question is actually challenging the methodology. I'm not certain that the assessor followed their own methodology when assessing our property when a comparable, which is supposed to be in your neighborhood, was 2.5 miles away. And even when I include that comp in my assessment, which was an exceptionally high assessment, I still get a different number than what was provided by the assessor. I would also like to know why we're not allowed to use Zillow for evaluating our property. Zillow is a large data model. It is off maybe 2%, and I failed to believe that the assessor is more accurate than a large data model. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Ken Doherty. I live up on Northbrook Street. And I got a few questions. One is, was the whole city reassessed? And number 2 is, what percent went up, what percent went down with the properties? The average percentage increases, what were they for the properties? And will the new tax rates go down to reflect this? Because my assessment went up 96%. And I look at houses around me, and it's crazy, 96%. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Yes.
Jessica Palmer. I live on Slauson Lane. I believe that's Ward 1. I'm just wondering what if the slots are filled for people who want to grieve? They're giving 4 hours for that, and my guess is they're going to have more people than they are time. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. I'm Gavin Brignall, and I have 2 things, a little off topic from this. First, I kind of want to give a young perspective to this. I fully resonate with all of you. I myself am not a property taxpayer. I have a wonderful mother who does that for me, and hopefully for another year while I finish college. But what I'd like to say is that I've grown up here 21 years now, and I can say a decade from now, I don't see how you see the population ever growing again. And I say that because I was part of a graduating class of 140 kids. It was the lowest in, I think, the last 50 years, and I can tell you none of us want to stay here. And it's not by our own doing, it's that we can't. And I just don't, if this is how bad it is now, I mean, the way I've seen Geneva growing up, unless you're a teacher, unless you're a doctor, unless you're a small business owner, starting a career here is next to impossible, and being able to afford a home here is also next to impossible. So I just like to say, you know, as much as we think about right now, which is bad enough, why don't we start thinking about 10 years when we have these young kids who don't want to stay here? Because that is going to that is going to seriously, you know, impact this community. And I myself am someone that I've wanted to get involved here locally, but I'm running out of time because I don't know if I can afford to stay here. And the second thing I want to bring up is a little, you know, off topic, like I said, but I think we seriously need to having to start some tough conversations about the fact that I'd like to see how many of our city employees don't even live in the city of Geneva. And I'm seriously concerned by, you know, these assessments I'm hearing, obviously, again, from my parents, but I'm also an observer. And I'm smart enough to realize that it's pretty ridiculous that we have a percentage of this city's workers that don't even get impacted by this and enjoy a very low tax rate compared to ours. And again, I'd like to start thinking about the future, and also just what's happening now is just, we need to start having tougher conversations than we're having, because this is just, nothing's going to change if we keep just talking about the right now. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Anyone else? Art, you want a minute? 60 seconds. You get 60 seconds.
I'll be quick.
Did you want to speak? I'm sorry.
Come on, you can go.
Okay.
No, take your 60 seconds.
59, 58.
I'm Art DeCaro. I'm still on William Street again. It's like it was before.
You didn't move.
My question is, were all these assessments done by computers only? Was any of the houses even looked at? Did people drive by and say from the outside, I know, were they looked at? And the other thing I'd like to say, and this young guy from college, my daughters, I have twin daughters. One lives on Slauson Lane, just 2 houses from John. She got a 76% increase. Now, the house isn't nice. It's a beautiful area. The house isn't that nice, 76% increase. And the other thing, her sister, the other twin, she's looking to buy a house. And she told me that I can't buy a house in Geneva. She's got a big chunk saved up for a down payment. But she goes, I don't want to get beat up every couple of years on the assessments. And the last thing I want to say is Tina, which one's Tina? Dear Tina, I talked to you this afternoon. And this morning I had to give blood for something. And the girl that did it was
I
Tina.
thought it was to pay your taxes.
Huh?
I thought it was to
Okay,
pay your
this
taxes.
is about taxes. Hang on.
No, the blood to pay your taxes.
Oh,
That was
yeah,
the joke.
well, that's what it's about. The
not
girl
done
that
yet.
took my blood this morning, her name was Tina. Now I talked to her this afternoon. She's crushing me with the taxes, so I'm getting beat up by 2 Tinas for they're taking the blood out of me.
Okay.
So that's
Thank
all
you,
I wanna
Art.
say. I'm done. My minute's gone. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Art. All right. Did we have one other? Yes, sir.
Anthony Vasquez, Maxwell Avenue, Geneva. I don't want to duplicate what everybody else has said. My concern is we have some elderly folks that have been lifelong residents of Geneva that are on the verge of losing their properties because they're on fixed incomes. That's a concern. I've had many conversations in the past with the assessor. I think she's wonderful. I'd like to make sure the assessments are fair across the board, not arbitrarily picked on. You know, for example, Maxwell, Larchmont, Brooks, and so forth. The other issue that I have is the non-taxable properties. There's got to be something, if we can have the city attorney maybe look into the charter. What is the definition of having property taken off the tax rolls? You know, what it was 75 years ago might not necessarily fit today. You know, Hobart, you know, they're an institution. Sure, have their properties as a college be exempt. But when they start buying properties in the city of Geneva, they're crushing us, in which I believe over 50% of the properties are tax exempt. There's got to be something done creatively as far as, you know, bringing some more property or more income back from these non-taxable properties. You can't just go ahead and say, I'm going to buy 5 houses on Maxwell Avenue, let's take them off the tax rolls. Oh, by the way, we're going to raise your property up, you know, because we need the money. So That's it. Again, let's be fair, let's be equitable, pay your own share. And that includes Hobart, that includes the other charitable people that are buying additional properties and they're making profits out of it. Somebody mentioned that they're full of donations and doing stuff. Our family has donated to the city. We've done a lot. At some point, I think Mr. Wee said, at some point, enough's enough. We can't give back to the city. The young man doesn't want to lose, you know, the younger generation here. That's it. Merry Christmas.
Anyone else care to speak? 60 seconds. Okay.
Jeff O'Donnell again. One thing I did forget, if you look at Encore, which is Ontario County, and you can look up the property values and do comparisons, which they do, they show a line on their fair market value, which is really way less than what these current assessments are coming in at or whatever. So is that taken into consideration when we're looking at the assessments or not? That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Don Friday on Washington Street. Been a resident for 50 years in the city of Geneva. My question is that Jack just triggered it. What is full market value? If in 2026 we get a reassessment chart and it says your full market value, what has occurred so significantly that changes property values in our area so that they're no longer the same? If I'm living in a group and we have, let's say my home's worth $100,000. So if I look at that group of people who pay about $100,000, $2,000 more, $2,000 less, I come up with how many people? Maybe 40, maybe 60. Do those 60 people all change the same way? If it's full market value a year ago, what has happened? You know, why is this being changed? And let's just examine that one, because I need to look behind the curtain. I want to know what the levers are that we're pulling to make the changes. And I agree with, I think it was Jack who said, Zillow seems to be good. Where do we go to get another challenge to this? Where do we see what our homes are valued by someone else? Or how do we make these choices? How can we do the math, so to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friday. Yes, sir. Last person to get one more minute is right here. After that, we're going to close the public hearing.
It's just a question because there's a house on Hillcrest that sold. It was listed at $329. It went for $379. A lot of people are paying more than the asking price. They're coming in with the cash and stuff. Where they come from, the property's a lot more expensive, so this is a bargain for them. And that's driven up prices in the neighborhoods, in the better neighborhoods. You know, it went $50,000 over the asking price. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, going to declare the public comment section closed. Art, I think you wanted another 60 seconds. I could see it, but okay. All right. So with that, in this portion, in recognizing Councilor Kane, you have another 3 minutes. I'd first like City Manager Hendricks to talk through the process and what brought us here to this point, and then we'll turn it over to the City Assessor to present and answer, ideally, every question posed, or at least most.
Yes, so I am going to be very brief because I don't have much to do with the assessment process, and that's done on purpose. It needs to be a standalone entity because I develop the budget, which then goes into your tax rate, and those two things are kept very separate due to statutory authorities. While the assessor does report technically to the comptroller and is a member of our team, it's very important that we keep those functions separate. The revaluation process, I'm going to let Tina talk more about. This process and the decision to start this process began last year in June, July. and then became part of the budget process and the notices around that, and it was due to our valuation dropping. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our assessor to talk more about how we got here, and then I know she'll be going through a list of several questions, which we've extended some to the others, and then I think probably can open it up for additional discussion.
Good evening, everybody. I know I've spoken to some of you on the phone and in person, and my door is always open. If you need to talk to me, you can call. I'm happy to take the phone calls and answer the questions. A lot of you have similar questions, and I've been hearing a lot of those, and that's completely fine. Let's see. I'll try to start with the questions that were posed here tonight, and then we'll go through some others. Let's see.
Assessor Routes, I'm sorry to interrupt. Councilor Kame has to leave, and he had just one question he wanted to add, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I got a lot of phone calls. A lot of people in the 6th Ward 2 years ago, our assessments went up 700 and 800% over what we paid for our houses back in the early 2000s. So I've gotten a lot of phone calls because there was a lot of my neighbors and people in the ward that were worried that theirs were going to go up again, and they haven't received a letter yet. So I told them that I would talk to you because they're concerned because the houses that they paid $40,000, $50,000 for are assessed now in the 6th Ward for $210 and almost $300,000. I know you're talking about a 40% increase, but in my ward, I bought my house for $33,000 and I got a letter a couple years ago. It's assessed at $200 and some $1,000. So are they going to get a letter?
If they haven't received it yet, it's probably not coming. If they want to check, they can call me. I'll be happy to look it up for them.
Okay, thank you very much. If they don't get a letter, what is the reason for that?
So,
Please.
when we started the reassessment process, the first thing to do is analyze the entire city and see where the inequities lie, and certain neighborhoods, neighborhood 100 specifically, the recent sale prices have been coming in where the assessments are. So when that happens, that neighborhood does not have to be adjusted. We don't adjust things just to adjust them. If they're not out of whack, we don't adjust. The other neighborhoods, of course, did need to be adjusted based on the sales data, and I'll get into that a little bit deeper so you understand the why. Did I answer your question? All of the preliminaries are online as well, so if they want to search, they can look for their street name. It's all in road order.
Well, they were searching and they didn't find it, and they
If
just
it's
didn't want
not
any
on there,
surprises because
yep.
they did get hit with a very large increase a couple years ago.
Sure.
And they were worried, if they could keep their house if it kept going up. So thank you
Right.
for the answer for that.
Of course.
And I understand what everybody's going through, and we're going to try to make Geneva good and keep everybody here. So good luck, everybody.
Thanks, Counselor. Appreciate your flexibility. Assessor Redis, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The fair market value estimate on the county, I know someone had asked that question. Basically what that is doing, when our equalization rate starts to fall from 100, and the reason that happens, every year New York State analyzes our sales data, compares it to our sales or our assessments. When they start to see that the sale prices are coming in much higher than the assessments, it drops our equalization rate. It is weighted by property class, and each of the residentials, the commercials, vacant land, and utilities are all looked at separately, and they're weighted depending on what the percentage of the entire city is. But as you start to see that those sale prices are coming in higher than the current assessments, our equalization rate, or level of assessment as some people like to call it, they're very similar, not the same exact thing, but that starts to drop. When that starts to drop, the school districts and the county, because they are fed by multiple municipalities, have to equalize the tax rate. So you will see if our equalization rate drops, the school rate and the county rate are going to go up a little bit to equalize to 100%. And that is to make it fair across the county, because if 3 other towns, for example, are still at 100%, they pay the 100% rate, the base rate. Ours would have to be equalized for dropping to the 92%, which it did last year. that brings me to my next point. But anyway, that fair market value is basically equalizing to 100%. It's not a real number. It's not based on anything other than the fact that this is your overall percentage for the city. We're equalizing it to 100, so this is your fair market value. It's not done with any kind of analysis. It's just straight math equalization to show what that fair market value would be. Pataki put that in, I believe, years ago. And the reason for it was because some of the municipalities across the state were not at 100%. They might have been at 50%. And, you know, if Mr. Jones comes in and buys his property for $100,000, but his assessment's 75, he's sitting there saying, I'm not saying anything. I'm 25,000 under assessed. But in reality, if the equalization rate was 50%, he's over assessed. Does that make sense? I don't want to jump around too much. No? So they put, when Pataki put that on, his intention was to be transparent. Because if your equalization rate or level of assessment is 50%, meaning that the assessor's role is 50% of what fair market value would be, but that wasn't shown before. It didn't show that 50% and the full market value number. It was just, this is your assessment, that's it, that's all, we're not doing any more explanation. The problem with that is, just like I said, if Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, they come in and they buy their house for $100,000, we've got a 50% equalization rate, and they're assessed at $50,000. Their assessment's really $100, right? Mm-hmm. So equalized, but they paid $75. But in their mind, they're like, I'm not going to say anything because I'm assessed at $50,000, $25,000 less than I bought for it, not understanding that there's that equalization shift. So that's why that was put on there to begin with, just to give you a little history lesson. I know it's boring stuff, but.
Can I just translate that into something that's, so does that mean necessarily your taxes will go, your tax payment will go up or down?
The tax rate will increase. When the equalization rate drops, your tax rate will increase because it has to be equalized at the school level and the county level to make it fair for the entire county and everyone that pays into that school district.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Fair market value, it's not the same as what your assessed value is.
The goal is to have fair market value be what the assessment is. That is the goal. The goal is to be.
Okay, so sorry, we really aren't supposed to do that, so I apologize. I appreciate the question, and we're going to try to get through.
I will say,
each of
though,
those.
I do love the dialogue, and I like to answer people's questions. I don't want anybody being confused about this. I know it's not easy stuff to get a grasp around if you don't deal with it every day. Please call me. I am happy to take your phone calls and explain as much as I can.
So maybe, Assessor Redis, we have a lot of questions here. Why don't we go through a series of questions we'd put together and pose to you as
Sure.
it relates to this. Maybe what we do is start with, and it does everything, just so folks, the questions that were posed to the assessor were around, tell us what is the method that was utilized, talk about the data set, the time period, the sample size, any property level characteristics or location factors. A whole series of questions were presented that we weren't, that we also wanted answers to, that many of which you have echoed this evening. So I think if you go through that,
Okay.
that would be a good way to start answering questions, and then we can get into what else needs to be answered.
Sure. So when we talk about reassessment projects and deciding whether to do them or not, what we first look at is, can we still claim 100% market value? If the answer is no, we then look at the entire city and we analyze it by neighborhood code. So there are reports that I can run, and it will give me the statistics on the specific neighborhood codes and tell me this one, the overall ratio was 80%, which would mean that those properties as a whole group were selling 20% higher than the assessments, which means that would have to be adjusted.
And so when you say, Assessor Redis, I apologize, that they will reflect current market conditions, how do you define a current market condition?
Based on the sales data.
So you're basing this on sales data.
And
Within
trending.
a half a mile, 2.5 miles, what sales data do you use?
So when we're talking about a neighborhood, and I know this is hard for a lot of people to understand, it doesn't have to be around the corner. Neighborhoods, the way we have them set up are they sell similar. So if a ranch sells for X amount of dollars per square foot or total in this neighborhood, and it also sells, you know, over here on this street, the same way, they're grouped in the same neighborhood. And the reason you want to do that is so when you are doing the analysis, you have more data to pull from. If you make your neighborhoods too small, you have a smaller data set to pull from. You might only have 2 sales. Now, 2 sales doesn't make a market. This is why we expanded out a little bit. We only have 4 neighborhoods total. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure we have enough data sets to get good numbers. When you only have 1 or 2 comps to pull from, it's going to pull it on every single house, and you're going to have skewed numbers.
So I'm sorry, you said 4 neighborhoods. Does that mean you did not perform an assessment, a reassessment for the entire city, or just a portion of it?
So when
That was
we're
one.
doing the analysis, we're analyzing each neighborhood individually.
You
So
said 4.
there's 4.
There's only 4 neighborhoods in the city.
There's 4. So neighborhood 100, and I don't have, I've got the sales list
Okay.
right here. And you can see this too on the sales list that I've posted online. Neighborhood 100 covers areas like Sherrill Street, Grant, State, Hollenbeck, Lafayette, Clinton, Geneva Street, Genesee Street, North Genesee, Lewis, part of Castle, let's see, Middle Street, Pulteney, part of Pulteney anyway. I don't know if I'm missing any. I think I got all those. West Ave, Clover. So they are
So-
grouped.
So just so I understand, you have actually a set of neighborhoods that don't necessarily reflect like Hildreth Hill or anything like that.
No.
Yours are defined as assessment neighborhoods.
Right.
Okay.
They are assessment neighborhoods. The reason being, of course, is because they sell similar, and that's why you have a larger data set to pull from. The reason we want a larger data set is because the other characteristic when I'm doing the analysis is I pull in from the same neighborhood, but I also pull in the same style home, or we do our best to do that anyway. So if it's an old style, we want to compare it to old styles. I also set parameters so that it's pulling old styles of similar square footage, similar condition. So we don't want to pull an old style that's been completely rehabbed and is in good condition to one that is fair condition. So these are all parameters that we set up in the background through the system that we use to it's a mass appraisal system. It's a very helpful tool. It is not perfect, but we do the best we can with what we have. And where am I going with this? So the neighborhoods are all analyzed. That's step number 1. We want to see which neighborhoods we have to adjust, which ones are okay and we don't have to adjust. This year it was determined that 100 overall was good and did not need to be adjusted.
So out of the 4, 1 neighborhood was not adjusted.
Correct. The
However,
rest
that's
of them
defined.
were.
The other 3 were. Okay.
Yes.
And again, 4 neighborhoods comprise the entire city.
They're all labeled as 100, 200, 300, and 400.
So please, for any,
No. No.
okay.
If you have 104 point something or other, you're in the 100.
So
No. What you're referring to is a tax map number. That has no correlation to.
So sorry, Mr. Friday, I would just direct everyone, as she said, this is on the website in terms of the neighborhoods and how they're defined.
And
I think
and-
that's where you'll see this answer. So let's
Yeah.
hold it with that. And okay. go
And
ahead.
again, if anybody has questions, or you leave here tonight and you're like, geez, I got to know this, call me tomorrow. Absolutely call me. I'm happy to take your calls. I'm happy to answer
So-
the questions.
So let me ask you then, in terms of methodology, and I'm going to give you an example, and maybe help answer it. I think this will echo a lot of what information I've been given in terms of some of the reassessments. So an assessment comes in, and I'm going to actually use a dollar per square as almost a common denominator. So the assessment of a house went up 84%, and in it there are 2 comps, including 2 directly in the neighborhood, 1 next door, that sold, and they're similar, somewhat dissimilar in size. Some are larger than the others, and then 1 sold, I think, about 5 blocks away. Each sold, right, at a price, and I'll just use the square foot, anywhere from $89.73 to the high end of 109.89. The reassessed proposal is 166.83. How does that happen?
A square foot?
A square foot. How does
So-
that happen?
So there's adjustments in the background too. So if the subject property, which would be the one that's being assessed, has items that the other homes do not have. So say the subject property is in good condition, it's been recently remodeled, and it has, you know, very little deferred maintenance, things like that.
So sorry, hold on. Let me just continue with this. Let me give you the example in terms of doing the research that was provided. The one basically was unrenovated, that's 166. The one that recently sold in November of 24, had a renovated new kitchen, fireplace, right?
Was it on the file that way?
That's what pulled up from the data research. Again, this goes to the questions that were asked in terms of where your information
Right.
comes from versus what people see. And just to
Right.
finish this, sorry, the one that just sold in April of 26, freshly renovated, new kitchen, new bath, interior residential lot, it's where it's exposed to. But each of these were newly renovated with elements to them that demonstrated this one, which has just been sitting there for the last 20 years unrenovated, has a significantly higher, again, cost per square. I think this is the piece in particular that people can't, I know I can't.
What is the dates on those sales?
One is November 14th, 24. The other is April 28th, 26.
Okay, so the April sale would not have been used in this revale.
Okay.
So that's the other problem. And when you ask why don't I like people to use Zillow to determine their market value, one of the big reasons I don't like Zillow, and Zillow's a nice tool. I'm not saying you can't print your Zillow estimate and bring that in if you want to, but don't hang your hat on it. One problem I have with Zillow, and people will come in all the time with, I found this comp that sold. Zillow, unlike my office, is not verifying the sale to make sure that it's an arm's length transaction. And an arm's length transaction is between a willing buyer, willing seller offered on the open market. When a Zillow sale comes up, it's just a sale. It doesn't say, the son bought it from the mom, or this was bought from a bank or something like that. It doesn't say that, to where my office will actually take the sale and throw it out if it meets any of that criteria, because it's not an arm's length transaction. So the reason I don't like people using Zillow comps is because they are not verified as arm's length transactions. We have them on file, I'm sure, but I verified. It's marked on the transfer form whether it's an arm's length transaction or not, and what the circumstances of the sale were. That makes a huge difference. So that's one main reason. The other reason is I had a property at one point that had a very, very nice home on it. It was almost a mansion in my career, with another house on it, a nice ranch. And they split the property, sold off the mom's house, which was the nice ranch, and Zillow put the mansion that's valued at over $1.2 million as sold for $400,000. So that is another reason. And when I talk about they don't verify their sales, it's a great tool. I'm not saying you can't use it, but if you're pulling it off the list that I've provided you, that it's an arm's length transaction. It's not going to be on this list unless it was a legitimate sale. They're already gone through. But back to your point, there could be other factors, and our computer system, when we set up a model, for example, we're putting things in there like, if it's got an extra bathroom, add this much, and it's making those adjustments. And on the comp sheet, you can actually see it'll list the subject property, which is the one that we're assessing at the time. It's going to give 3 sales, and then at the very bottom, it's going to show you that this is the time-adjusted sale price, and then this is the adjusted sale price. That adjusted sale price at the bottom is trying to make that property that's sold more like the subject, so you can make, and that's what they do on an appraisal report. If you've ever reviewed an appraisal report, is they're making those adjustments to the sale properties to make them more like the subject to get the best number. it's not always a perfect system, and that's why we have things like informal hearings and options to do assessment reviews. And obviously, you know your home better than we do because we're only looking from public right of way. We can't see inside. I don't know if there's major issues going on. Well, right, and I, just so you know, assessors are not allowed to go on property without permission from the owner. So we are not allowed to get out of our vehicle and walk around your house. We're not allowed to peek in windows or anything like that. We have to look from public right of way. So that's why we are making assumptions based on what we can see from that public right of way. If there are issues, like say you had a major water leak in your upstairs and your bathtub fell through your ceiling. I have no way of knowing that unless you come and say, Tina, my bathtub fell through my ceiling.
So Assessor, if you don't mind, just in terms of this, and I think this goes from methodology in terms of you started talking about the sales data set that essentially anchor the 26 valuations. In terms of your answer here, I'm just going to say this first, that, and this is for the benefit of the audience, it reflects market conditions, sales information available through January 1, 26, consistent with valuation timelines established for the assessment role. And the data set ranges from 1/1/24 to 1/1/26. Older sales are time adjusted. So that's, I think, what you just said.
Correct, yes.
Just to make sure that's crystal clear in what I'm reading.
The time adjustments where they come in, New York State every year when they analyze our sales data, they'll tell us you had a residential trend or an A-class trend of 11% this year. And then they'll give you the one for, they're all broken down. So the commercial has its own, vacant land has its own, and then utility has its own trend. So they're all different. But when you're doing a reassessment, the older sales, to bring them up to current market, you have to time adjust using that state trending, which is something else our system does for us automatically. We plug them in and run it, and it does time adjust them. So it is a nice tool to use. And I'm trying, did I forget anything for that?
I think you answered 1, 2, and 3, what specific property level characteristics are factored into each
Okay.
individual assessment. I think you answered that.
Yep.
And that was some of the questions that some of the folks asked as well.
The quality control, too. We run testing on our models before we even print documents.
Sorry, there was one question before that, and I think it was related to what you even said earlier. Were there any physical inspections done?
Yes.
This assessment, okay.
Yes, there was. If
How many?
there, I don't know how many, it varies. We start this project, just so you know, in August, and it takes us until the spring to complete it. They are all viewed at least from aerial imagery. The reason I like the aerial imagery better than, and we have something called pictometry, so we're able to zoom in, we're able to look at it from multiple angles. We're also able to take measurements if we need to. Say, if there's a garage we didn't know that was there, I'm able to measure it from the aerial imagery and add it to the inventory and value it. So yes, they are all looked at in one way, shape, or form. If the aerial imagery is blocked for some reason, sometimes there is a tree in the way and you can't see, then you get in the car and you go and you look. But again, we're looking from the street, and we know how busy it is and how mad people get when you sit on the street too long and they're trying to get by you. So we have a few minutes to look before we get honked at. But we do the best we can with the information that we have. Now, every year we do put in the paper an inventory notice. That inventory notice basically says, hey, you're welcome to come in and view the inventory that we have on file. If we have incorrect information, please let us know. Every time somebody buys a property, we send them out a sales verification form. That sales verification form says, this is the inventory we have on the property. Please tell us if anything is different now. Did somebody add a bathroom we didn't know about? So those are the type of record keeping that we do as things sell, to try to keep the data as accurate as possible. Now, 2 years ago, again, we did look at everything. There were things added that weren't there. If we saw things, it was more of a data collection 2 years ago. And of course, with new building permits and that, we are going out and looking at those and inspecting those because they're not going to be on the aerial imagery. It's too new. So those we inspect in person. And I think did I get everything on that one?
I think you covered the physical in terms of their drive-bys, it sounds
Okay.
like, and the aerial, the different components. The quality control, I think you were starting to get into.
Yes.
So this is the checking, the quality control, that your assessment is indeed checked and double-checked.
Right. So what we do to start with is we create a sales PID, and I'm going to bore you guys with some of this stuff a little bit, but I'm sorry. So the sales PID, it's pulling in all that sales data that's going to be used for the reassessment. And what we're doing with that is we're going to run it against our model and test it to see if the statistics, if it's repredicting properly. When we do that, it gives us, there's a little, and I'm happy to show people this anytime if you want to be bored a little bit, but it does give you a margin of error on the side there, on each of the sales. When you start seeing larger margin of error, you go and you look at the sale and you say, is this an outlier, or is this a good sale that I just have to modify my model so it's going to work properly? And you do that, and it takes a long time to test because you're constantly going in, looking, changing something, maybe taking a sale out if it's not an arm's length, or if it's just an outlier that you don't want to skew the numbers, you might throw it out. And then you keep rerunning it and testing it until you get to where you want to be with the statistics that are in line. And then after that happens, you're building your project tables. If you have to modify land tables, you do that. At that time, that's also based on sales. If you have the sales data, I don't ever have a lot of vacant land sales data in the city because there's not a lot of lots for sale. So that doesn't usually change too much. But so you're basically taking all these separate things and you're putting them together to create the project table. And then you are running your documents, and then you look at them first to make sure that you're getting accurate data. What you want to see, basically. And when I say what you want to see that it's pulling comparables that are actually comparables. If it's an old style house, you want to make sure it's pulling old styles from the same neighborhood, similar square footage, things of that nature, just to make sure that you are going to get good numbers out of this. It does not work perfect all the time. I know split levels, I didn't have any split level sales. So then you have to start looking outside and say, well, what's comparable? And then you go to the next, maybe a raised ranch or a Cape Cod or something like that that might sell similar to, historically anyway, to a split level. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into setting up the tables before you even run your documents. Once you have those documents, that's when you're going and you're looking at the properties and you're making adjustments on them as needed, and then circling the value that you want on the sheet. So that's basically the methodology that goes into it. It's all based on the recent sales data, time adjusted sale prices, things like that. And that's why I provide them, just so you can kind of it's almost like a double check. When you look at your property, you certainly know the condition of the inside. I don't. I have to make assumptions on that. So basically, that's what the informal hearings are for. If you feel that the assessment's too high or you want to see what comps we used, you're welcome to stop in and I'll be happy to print them for you. I tried to be as transparent as possible. I don't know what else I could have put on the website. The sales data is all up there. The preliminary assessments are up there. I sent this reassessment letter kind of explaining what the project is, what it isn't, dispelling some myths. Trying to think if I covered everything with that.
Well, I think you covered, and the goal of that question was to understand the quality control. I think the next question is around some of the statistics, the distribution. So is here what you're getting, and it's not surprising. You're going to hear probably more from those who have a higher impact than you do with those who are lower. They're probably quietly holding their heads down and trimming their bushes and being quiet about it.
Sure.
Right? So in terms of the grouping by size of changes, could you talk a little bit about that, please? What does that tell you? Is it typical? Is it atypical? Maybe some commentary around that.
So when I run when I print the sales data out, and then I did this just so you guys kind of have a little visual. The yellow here is anything that had 80%. It was either 80% of assessment the sale price at the time that it sold. So it would be looking at 2025's roll, because we're doing testing, right? We want to see where we're at. Anything that's yellow like this, it's like this is 78% of the assessment. This one was 67% of the assessment. But when you look at the ones that have doubled, you know, I've gone up 100%. This sale, for example, the 2025 assessment for this specific property was $144,500. It sold on March 22nd, 2024 for $270,000. And this was after the last revale was done. These are the sales coming in after. So that's just one example. There's others. So this one here, it was assessed for $207,000. That was the new assessment after the revale. It sold on March 27th, 2024 for $415,000.
So Assessor, I mean, I think you're going back a little bit in terms of some of the potential impacts and methodology. And maybe one quick question on methodology. Do you remove any potential outliers? Someone owned that home for 60 years and they sold it, and there wasn't a reassessment, so it causes a huge swing. Do you remove any outliers?
We don't have that because we've done reassessment.
So in other words, is something sold strangely? You have no, in other words.
No, I know what you're saying. That's part of the model setup. So when you're setting up your model, you're looking for, like, this one's way out in left field. Why is that one so far out? You have to take a little bit closer look at that specific property and decide if it's fitting within the parameters of everything else, or if it's just these people just had money to blow and they wanted to drop $600,000 today.
Okay.
Then you throw it out.
Okay.
But when I see, and all these little red, and I know you probably can't see this far, but all these little red things here, these are ones that have almost doubled, and they just keep going. So when you're seeing assessment increases that are 100%, 80%, it is because of all these little red guys here that have told me that this type of home in this neighborhood is way too low based on the sales data. So.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. If you're throwing out homes that are assumed to be arm's length sales that are going under value, how are we then not throwing out homes that might be the process of bidding wars?
And that was the question.
Overvalued?
So that was the question, actually. You just framed it a little more emotionally and passionately. I shouldn't say emotionally, sorry. Passionately, I appreciate that. That was the question around that, in terms of how do you look at ones that are way outside and that seemingly are abnormal for whatever reason. And her answer, again, I will paraphrase it, was that you look at those, they're highlighted in red, and you look at each one of those to determine that in terms of coming up whether or not they would be incorporated in impact. I think that's the answer I heard.
But I'm not certain that that's the answer the rest of us heard, because they felt that it came off more as that means you're undervalued and that you need to come up, not that these properties are over.
Well, so you're talking two different things.
Yeah.
When we're talking about setting up our project tables in the modeling, that is when we are excluding sales that are outside the norm. So they've either sold too low and maybe there's issues with the house that I'm not aware of, or it's sold too high. So those are thrown out during the modeling process because we don't want the numbers skewed. So when we're doing the modeling, that is when we're eliminating them before we even get to the document phase.
And that's the point. That was the question.
Yes.
Understood. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor. Is it okay if I go off menu and ask a little bit more about the distribution? Nice to meet you. Sorry that we haven't met before this. I tried to do some research ahead of this presentation and looked into the New York State Department of Taxation records. 2025 isn't available, or it's not done, at least publicly, so I only have like 24.
On the state website?
Yeah.
It should be
It's possible I missed it. Anyway, we can still go through this exercise because it's maybe the missing piece. So I looked at 2022 through 2024, looked at Ontario County specifically, looked at neighboring counties. I looked at what's happening in the New York State housing market, broadly speaking, excluding New York State or New York City, treating that as an outlier. And over the last, those 4 years, we saw like a 15% increase in the median home sale price.
Mhm.
In Ontario County specifically, we saw, let's see, 22 to 23 was like a 9.5% increase. Last year was less; it was only 5.3%. But when I look at the median, I think it's median in your preliminary. It's not average. Is that right? The increase for residential specifically?
Where are you looking?
Have in the preliminary records the approximate change percentage in residential property type is 24.5%.
Oh, yes.
Is that a median or is that the average?
That's the average.
That's the average. Okay, so there could be some outliers pulling that up or down. What I'm trying to get at here is if that's the average increase, which seems beyond what the taxation records are showing, at least for 22 through 24. It's possible that 25 was like an especially hot market year, and I don't have access to that data. Help me understand like the delta there. Is it that we had many properties that hadn't been assessed recently, and so we're seeing these greater percentage jumps?
No, it's the sales data. When I was talking about the red on here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Let me ask my question a different way. We dropped to 92% equalization rate
Correct.
last year, right?
Yes.
What were we in like at an equalization rate the previous 3 years? Do you know?
Well, yes, I do know. Actually, that's on the sheet here.
Well, my hypothesis here, which we could disprove, is like, we were only at like an 80% equalization rate, right? And so people are going to see larger increases in their assessed values because it has been longer since we did an assessment of those properties, and the market has been hot. But
Right.
maybe that's not the case.
So, to answer your question, yes, 2024 before the reassessment, or I'm sorry, 2023 before the reassessment was done, we had dropped to 78%.
Okay, so it is possible that some of these people who are seeing a 50%, a 100% increase in their assessed value haven't had an assessment since 2023.
No, because we did the reassessment in 2024 and brought it up to 100.
Okay. Okay.
So, right.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that.
Tina, too, the thing on that is, just because they did a revaluation does not mean that,
Can you go to
when you,
the mic?
oh, I'm sorry. When you're an assessor, you're doing 4,500 properties in the city. Nobody's perfect. So when you're going back the next time she comes through, she's gonna see there may be one that you made a mistake. It may be too low, maybe too high, and you're making those adjustments during that next reval. So, if you were too low in the last one, you're gonna be higher this time. I always have a problem with, I get somebody that'll come in and they'll come in the grievance, and the grievance board will change their assessment more than I ever thought they should have changed it. Well, then I go to do the next update. When you go to do the update, now they're already maybe 10% low, and so the neighbors are all going up 10%, but that particular house goes up 20%. So it's hard to look at it as a general.
Okay.
When you're and the state doesn't help you because they put market value on the roll. The reason they put market value on the roll is you got places like Nassau County, who when last reval they came in at 2%. So, as Tina was trying to tell you before, I know the assessors down there, and they love it because you put a $50,000 garage up, they put $500 on the roll, and they're over assessing you, they know it. But you think, oh geez, 500, that's pretty good. I'm sorry, I'm kinda out of line here,
But assessments
Well,
are
yeah.
still gonna go up as more properties come off the tax rolls.
When we're looking at taxable values in the city, and I sat here for 13 years, it's difficult in that, at the time, Hobart was buying a bunch of houses on South Main Street.
And again, maybe.
And
that's
those
something
cost
the
us
city
more.
manager- Maybe that's
So-
where the city attorney starts looking.
So, sorry, no, you already made that point. We
Okay.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Understood.
it's-
One of the questions we have here as well, which will be posed to the assessor, and it's also a broader question,
Yeah.
is around the categories of commercial property, large institutional, tax-exempt parcels. How are they treated? How are they formed? What options, choices do we have? It is one of the questions. It's one of the things we're looking at, right? Again, tonight is information gathering, information understanding that lead to some sort of action. So just a reminder that these should, in everything, the
Sorry.
questions that were asked, we're trying to make sure we're,
I know.
they're
stay in
being
the line.
answered.
I'm sorry. Am I
All
lying?
right, thanks, Pat.
So, back to my question. Am I right in interpreting this as assessed values have increased 24% just since the last assessment that we did, which was in 2024, by 24%?
I would say on average.
Sure.
And when you were talking about the state putting out that trend number,
Mm-hmm.
it is specifically for Geneva from the sales that they analyzed
Sure.
for
Yeah,
us. But
I guess
it's an overall number.
Sure, yeah.
So if you have your higher end properties selling for 100 to 200,000 over,
Yeah.
but your lower end properties are coming in good. I mean, they're coming in right where they
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
Then again, you're gonna see higher percent increases on the ones that are lacking, the ones that are coming in at 50% equalization when you're looking at them as an individual.
Sure.
So
And so it's not.
It's-
I think you're saying my question is the wrong sort of question. And to be very precise about my question is like, hey, we saw 24%, but it seems like the median home price increase in Ontario County, which I know is more general than just Geneva, is, let's be like really generous and say it's like at 10%. Like, I don't understand that differential.
So are you talking, when you say 10%, are you talking about the state's trending for?
I'm talking about the percent increase in median home sale price in Ontario County in 2025. Let's say it's twice what happened from 23 to 24. And I'm struggling to understand the delta between a very generous, I think, increase in observed like median sale price increase and what we're seeing for the assessed value for homes in Geneva.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but.
And maybe that's the wrong sort of question. Maybe
So-
you're saying like, no, these are different data sets. It doesn't.
They are different data sets,
Okay.
and I don't look at the whole county because I
Sure.
don't assess the whole county.
Yeah.
So I'm focusing on the sales data that I have just for the city. And we're trying to make sense of, and basically what you're trying to do is repredict what sale price. When
Yeah,
when
sure,
you're testing
sure.
that model, you're trying to repredict that sale price, get it to come out as close to those numbers. And
Sure.
there's a bunch of statistical data that goes into that.
Got it.
And ideally, you want it to not be over. You want it to be right at
Okay.
that, meeting that. And it's sometimes very difficult.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to really manipulate
Yeah.
and say, this neighborhood, we have to even take another factor in there because
sure.
an old style here is not the same as an old
Yeah,
style
sure.
here. So there's really a lot that goes into
Okay.
it. There's a lot of testing, a lot of preparation work before you even get to the document portion.
What- When I think about like other cities in Ontario County, would it be fair to say that Geneva probably has seen the highest increase in home sale price in the
No.
last year?
Well, in the last year?
Yeah.
Probably, yes. So when we did the city of Canandaigua, for instance, those sales were much higher when we did the reassessment, and they were done on the same year. So when they were done in the same year, the sales in Canandaigua were much higher than Geneva. Geneva came later, so
Exactly,
the
yeah.
next year we saw a boom here.
Sure. Yeah,
and
I'm
it
trying to like
started
think
to
of like
level
other
out.
explanations for this delta, right? Like
Yeah.
the county level might be, I mean, 10%,
Absolutely.
10% is still significant, but
Yeah.
We're seeing like a boom in
Yes.
the housing market
And
specifically
it was
in Geneva.
right after
Okay.
our data sets, basically, we started seeing those come in. And again, Canandaigua's dropped this year too because of the sales. They're not as high as they were. I mean, they are still high.
Sure.
And they're creeping up still, but they're not as high as they were.
They're not at the same
creeping up.
rate of change
Right.
as we're
It's
observing in
starting
Geneva.
to kind of do this instead of this.
Okay.
And I think the same is true here. I mean, right now, and the problem with reassessments too is we're looking at historical data because it does take us about 8 months to complete a project.
Sure.
So you have to have that cutoff point. So when people say, well, can I go to Zillow and use newer sales? Absolutely you can. I can't, but you can.
Yeah.
If you want to use it to challenge. So the only thing I say is make sure it makes sense. If it's, you know, a house that would normally sell for $250 and somebody got it for $75,000, there's probably a problem with that house.
Yeah.
Or it's not a good sale. So, and I do have people bring those to me, and, you know, I have to look it up and say, oh, you know, it was a bank sale or something like that. So, getting back to, and where were we? We already addressed, I go on tangents, I'm sorry.
I think we're now moving into, and this gets into the comparatives around commercial, tax exempt,
Okay.
and the review of each of those.
Yes. So tax exempt, I don't really see a distinction with tax exempt. They're still valued like everything else is. If it's a commercial building, it's valued like any other commercial building, and it goes by use. So churches, you know, sometimes are a little bit difficult because you don't have you don't have rent information for a church, obviously. You don't have sale information typically for a church, and if you do, a lot of times they sell for less than the assessments because they're purchased to repurpose a lot of the times. So those are a little bit difficult to value, but if it's a single family home that's tax exempt for whatever reason, that's valued like any other one, and it's thrown right in the mix like every other one. And the commercial properties as well, whether they're tax exempt or they're on the tax roll, they are valued using the valuation factor file. We were fortunate enough to have GAR Associates do a valuation factor file at the county level and tweak it for each of the municipalities. So we had that tool to use for this year.
So that would be considered a third-party valuation tool that you use
Correct.
to help gain, okay,
Yes.
okay.
And those are still viewed the same way, you know.
And are all commercial nonprofits, are those also aligned with the neighborhood, or are those separate from the neighborhood as you define them?
They're thrown right in the mix with everything else. So if it's a commercial property, whether it's tax exempt or on the tax roll, it's in the same group.
Right, so you said out of the 4, 1 wasn't done.
That would be neighborhood 100.
Neighborhood 100.
Mm-hmm.
Did you not then assess the commercials or the nonprofits in neighborhood 100?
I did because we had this new data.
Okay, okay.
They were all reviewed.
So we can get, for example, if we want to look up a particular nonprofit,
Mhm.
we can see their assessment change again
Yes.
and understand that. Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
And it, like I said, if it's a residential property, it's going to have a comp document like anything else.
Which I think answers the question that a citizen had. Did you actually assess and/or did the state assess every single parcel in the
Yes,
city of
they
Geneva?
were all reviewed as a group first. The different neighborhoods were reviewed as a group, and then we determined what needed to go up.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lavin.
Before this gets too long and I lose, I do have to say it's very odd, and it speaks to the odd nature of taxation in New York State that a bunch of people who learned that their greatest asset in life and their greatest what they'll leave to their next generation is worth a lot more, and they're in here complaining. That shows to me is the beginning of a conversation that I'm afraid I've been doing for 2 years to not much effect. There were no big groups of people in here till they got something in the mail that suggested they might get more of a tax increase because they're now wealthier and their house is worth more and the cost of living, being in Geneva is better. To me, the message here is take your win, but turn back and understand that in Geneva, you happen to have that win in a place where we've had 25 years of poor, in my opinion, tax management, and that is going to continue this year. We need to, the 8 council people that are here are going to have to make tough decisions to make sure that the assessment you have is not going to take more money out of your pocket or as little out of your pocket as possible with concerns of equity. You have to have the same and more interest in what it is we're spending. In the end, the levy, what we take from your pocket, is decisions that are made up here by this group. And some of the decisions we have to make now, because of the 25 years of mismanagement of our taxes, our relationships with other towns, our water and sewer, we are looking at ways here as a council to spread more of the cost of sewer and water over the nonprofits and the tax exempts. Tough decisions to make, that kind of thing.
So, Councilor Lavin, I think
I
you're addressing what Gavin and others were highlighting in terms of the cost
right,
of
but,
living for
but,
certain.
But it's you who will sit here and say, don't raise my assessment, that may raise my taxes, but don't cut that fire truck. Don't go to the town and make them join with us in some of the things that we share expenses. They're complex issues, but it has very little to do, frankly, with your assessment. It has to do with what we spend. And if you want to be as interested in the commonwealth of this community, be interested in what we're doing up here to spend and what our relationship with other towns and what we're doing, and learn that, not just, hey, I mean, I can't imagine that 2 weeks from now you decide to sell your house and you're arguing, use the lower assessment. All right, so.
You gotta buy another house.
Well, you
all
don't
right.
have to.
So,
You don't have to. I'm just saying that.
Counselor and I think Art and others, maybe let's round out, because there's only a few more questions here, and then we can, I think, get into that dialogue and discussion. Counselor Gummo, did you have any other follow-up or any other questions there?
No, thank you.
Counselor Brennan, did you have any other?
Just
Go ahead,
a couple of
please.
things,
Yeah.
please. Ms. Rados, again, just to go back a little bit here, and again, another citizen asked earlier, let me start with this. So in 2024, we had, thanks to that revaluation, we had a 100% equalization rate. And through the powers, through the system that is, over those last 24 months, you've discovered that through the state, that because of sales, et cetera, that the rate dropped down to 93%, I think?
92, I believe.
92%. And that's what triggers, again, the reval.
Yes.
So to the citizen's question, can we expect another reval in 24 months from now, do you think?
I sure hope not.
Well, okay.
Well, on that question, Counselor, here's a question.
Sure.
Did you decide to do the reval?
Yes.
Okay. And based upon what process do you decide to do a reval?
So it's not all about the equalization rate. A lot of it is to do with inequities. That is my biggest concern, is the inequities. So when I'm looking at the sheet and I'm seeing, this one sell for 50% of its assessment. This one sell for 47%. It's 62% of its assessment. And you see all these inequities, but neighborhood 100 is good. If we don't readjust and reassess the entire city, look at everything again, make sure it's fair and equitable, the individuals that did not need to change at all are picking up the burden for the ones that are at 50% of what they paid for it. You cannot go and just change assessments on houses that have sold. That is against the real property tax law. You have to do a full-blown reassessment. The reassessment is for the benefit of the people, and I know nobody ever sees it that way. They just see my assessment went up, my taxes are going up. It is really to make it fair and equitable across the board and make sure that you're not picking up the slack from the newly purchased homes at 50% equalization and all the other ones that may not be at fair market value now because the market trend has increased so greatly in that small amount of time. I hope it doesn't continue with that trend because, again, I don't like doing reassessments that frequently. We typically, before this one, before 24, it was 4 years in between reassessments. And that, again, is the reason during a hot market why you saw the equalization rate drop down to 78%. I don't ever like to see it get that low. It's very concerning. Also, a lot of people don't know that if you're not at that 100%, New York State does not give you as much in state aid. It's equalized. And I do want to point out, too, because I know when everybody says, well, my taxes are going up, and nobody ever believes me when I've got that little note on there that says just because your assessment goes up doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up. Do we know why that is? That's a real thing.
We spend.
It's a question. I know you're not supposed to answer me, but I have to know.
I'll answer and say no. I'll answer and say no.
No, so nobody knows why. Okay. When your tax base grows, so that's done through reassessments, increases in sale prices, increases in assessments, now you have a larger tax base. The rate per 1,000 goes down. And it's not should go down, it does. In 2024, when I did the reassessment, 2024's tax year, 2023's roll year, we were at 78% equalization. The tax rate for the city was $17.25. The county was $7.66, 67 cents rounded, and workers' comp was 61 cents. The year after the reassessment, now we're at 100%. The city tax went down to $12.16 per thousand from 17.25. That is quite a drop.
Did not lower taxes.
It lowered the tax rate.
The rate, but not what these people were paying from their pocket.
Well, maybe.
Some
If
yes,
the
some-
assessments, if the assessment for, say the average increase was 40% and you went up 20%, you saw a tax savings.
Some.
Some.
The
But it's-
vast majority, no.
It depends on the percentage increase.
Depends on what we spend.
At what point,
That is how it's calculated, our tax
Right.
base, right? Budget, tax base levy.
Right.
It's
and,
all-
and you're both right. You're literally both right.
We're both right.
Right?
Yeah.
So but they're also two different things, but you're both right.
Correct.
I think the concern, and this goes to the frequency of it, is to do it within a 2-year period. Doesn't take into account that possibly that 1 year is an outlier, and that why the actual state average is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And that allows for more, if I dare use your term, equalization in terms of sale prices, so it's less of a potential shock. How is that judgment call made? Where is that authority? Where is that policy? And can council, for example, pass a policy to say, yep, you're going to do it every 3 or 4 years?
Well, it's really up to the assessor to do the analysis and see if it's necessary. If it's not necessary, I'm not going to do it because I got to tell you, it's a lot of work. And I don't like making people mad at me. It's not fun, just so you know. I don't like to do that. And I know it's hard for a lot of people to understand why we're doing it, but it is really for the benefit of the people. Now, say our equalization rate drops, but the inequities, they're all dropping at the same rate. There's no inequities there. I'm not going to be in a huge hurry to do a reval because we're all going to go up about the same when we do it. It's when I see 50% when we're really at 92 overall. That's ugly. I don't like that. That's not fair to people. That's not fair to my people.
So again, the determination of that is made by you and solely by you. If a city council were to say at any municipality, we're going to set a policy around assessments, certainly not at the individual level. We know we can't do that. We're not even going to pretend we can do that. I want to make sure that's clearly stated. But that in order for a city to have a policy, and in that policy that we want to have and will authorize and pay for assessments every 4 years, if you don't have the money, can you not assess? Let's say it's not budgeted. How do you make a decision?
I don't spend money. The only money that it's costing is the postage and the mailing. That's it. I don't spend money to do the revals.
Okay, so there's no budget allocated for an assessment?
No, they're done in-house.
So again, I go back to the original question around, in terms of deciding at what point and what time, your methodology is your methodology, or is it a state methodology and one that's applied equally, and are you following that?
I do pay attention closely every month when I enter the sales. Twice a month I enter sales. I do watch them very closely to see what they're doing. And when I'm entering that, I'm looking sometimes if it's, ridiculously off. I pull up the sale and look at it right away to see, and then say, oh, they did a full house renovation and forgot to get a permit. Imagine that. And I only know when they sell. So for things like that, if they don't get the permit.
Okay.
Some people are good and they get the permits. But,
Okay.
but honestly, I don't know too many assessors that wait 5 years. The reason that is, you don't do a reval after 3 years, 4th year, state comes in and surveys. Then your number really drops in a hurry, typically. Because what the state does when they survey is they say, okay, we're gonna grab this house, we're gonna grab this house, and this house, and this house, and we're gonna do appraisals on those houses. Whatever we come back with for those ratios, it's going across that whole class. It's a very small sample size.
Is it possible, and in your experience, and again, doing some research on this as well, and again, maybe I'm right or wrong, is it possible to adopt what are referred to as transition assessments? In other words, let's say someone's went up 150%, and that could represent a serious increase in the amount that they will have to pay given the equalization rate. So instead of it occurring year one, it actually spread out between assessments. Similarly, for those who got a reduction, and sorry for those of you who got a reduction, their reduction would occur at the same rate. So that in other words, they might not achieve the benefit of that. And again, this is to smooth it out so that the impact isn't as severe.
And I'm gonna say it doesn't matter so much because the entire tax base is going up at the same time. So now your tax base is larger. If I were to say, we're not gonna go to 100%, we're gonna go to 80%, that's what a transitional assessment is.
I'm actually meaning it, if it were to be at the assessed level that ends up at the individual household, that if, and I'm just gonna use your grouping here, right? Let's say that 112 and 60, what it is, 182, 172 homes were up between 75 to over 100%, right? Then there were 203 up to 760 that were assessed below 25%. The impact of that potentially is going to be felt with a reduction in the amount they actually pay. And this is to Councilor Lavin's point, right? The amount they will actually pay. Is it possible to state that we will phase in, or you could phase in, or the city could legislate phasing in the impact of that assessment for those in these categories over a longer period of time to help ensure affordability?
No. They're all going to full market value. If you start manipulating specific percentages and ranges, you're no longer at full market value.
So it would take a state action to do what California did, which was to limit each property at 2% per year is the most you could increase in California. That was Proposition 13 there. And it kept the great swings that people are seeing out, but it also limited what the state could get from property tax.
My understanding of Proposition 13 was you couldn't change an assessed value until the property sold.
No, it was 2% per year until it sold, and then it could go up to whatever the market was then.
Right,
That's
but do
the
we
way-
realize how inequitable that is when you're talking about fairness?
Well, it's also inequitable when some city in California goes up 90% and people can't live there anymore. That's what we're facing here
But
now.
again, back to your point, that has to do with spending.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all of these mix in for sure, and I guess all I wanted was the question of, and again, I'll point out another, and I guess would, by that definition, it's unfair to adjust local exemptions for seniors or veterans or people on fixed income. Would that be then deemed unfair?
What do you mean
Do we not apply exemptions to those who are seniors or on a fixed income?
We do.
So then by that definition, is that not unfair? How can we do that and not the other?
Because those are exemptions that we've put in place.
But it leads to an inequality and not achieving FMV.
No, it's still assessed at fair market value.
But they're not going to, they get an exemption.
That's correct.
Okay, therefore it is inequitable by definition.
Not much I can do about that.
Okay.
Those are state.
Again, I just want to be clear here.
Right.
I'm not opposed. Matter of fact, I advocate for exemptions and really reflecting the local characteristic that the city council, and that's what I think we're trying to sort out here, is understanding how the city functions and how it operates, how people are basically tapped out in so many ways, in so many respects. How can we apply to an assessment that is blind to affordability, allows us the flexibility to understand that yes, make adjustments, yes, potentially face the consequence, but allows people to afford so they can stay and live here? That's the fundamental question I think I'm asking, and I'm hearing with some of the others here. And
Well-
there may or may not be implications to that from a calculated level, but people don't live necessarily calculated lives. So how do we adjust for that? Are
Well,
there options?
One of the options would be if you don't do reassessments. But when that happens, when it doesn't happen, I should say, you are going to have inequities that exist in the roll. When people come in and pay double what the assessment is and everybody else is okay, your equalization rate's going to start dropping. You're going to get less money in state aid. Your tax rates are going to increase every single year. So now the senior citizen who was at 100% market value but getting the exemptions that they qualify for, their tax rate has now become so high on the portion that they are still responsible for. Can they afford to stay here?
Yeah, Assessor Rado, I don't disagree with that. It's pointing out the simple fact that there are inequities built in that allow that to happen. The question around affordability, and yes, I completely agree with Councilor Lavin, and that we are undergoing an effort now to look at what, where, and how we spend, and adopting policies to address the actual tax rate to help address it. And it's going to take some time. It's the issues of shock to the system. For example, we're going to propose for adoption a debt management policy, a debt strategy, and we're phasing it over 5 years, because if we did it in year 1, all of us would be here with torches, including probably me. But we're not going to do that because we need to phase it in. It just seems as though an assessment's difficult to phase in, and I get what you're saying. I actually very much respect what you're saying. I understand the math. I love the math. I get it. I'm a math guy. I'm a math nerd, as I love to call myself. I understand that. It's the impact to the citizenry and the taxpayers in light of those who are tax exempt. Again, I fully recognize that. Are there abilities for us not to do in Erie County? I will not advocate us not doing assessments, and no one here, I would go so far as Linda to say, wouldn't do that. But what are our options? And maybe Assessor Rados, that is one of our takeaways. I believe that's one of our takeaways, including a policy as it pertains to assessment of what we were able to do as it relates to the city of Geneva. So that's where I was thinking. Right?
We can submit our plan to New York State and say we're going to reassess every 3 years. I mean, we do have to complete a plan and tell them when we're reassessing. I had to complete a new plan because we moved it up. The only reason I moved it up, the 92% drop didn't really scare me. That's not really hurting people too bad. It was the inequities in the sale prices. And it's because those really high numbers started coming in after the reval was completed. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the market's going to do this year, next year, the year after that. It could completely bottom out. Who knows? And that's not a good thing either. But
Probably a quixotic question on my part, but one of the things I'm concerned about is we've let people come in and pay extraordinarily high prices because they could turn around and run them as Airbnbs at a profit. That's taken that inventory off, raised prices, and do we have a way of analyzing the houses being licensed now for Airbnb, the sale prices compared to the average before? Can we do an analysis of the effects of that? Because I'd like to, I mean,
it'd be interesting to see
Right.
what the percentage is of the recent property sold. I'm not finding that, though, a lot with these. I know it does happen, but I'm not finding that a lot
So
of these high-value ones are Airbnb use. They're
I
purchased
think
as
with this
homes.
Assessor Rados, and
Yeah.
are there any other questions for the assessor as it relates to the assessment at this stage?
Only one very small one, please,
Please.
Mayor, and that's, I think I know the answer, but I have to ask. Any assessment letters that are gonna go out have gone out?
They have gone out.
So if I did not receive one or two on a couple of properties, I'm not going to, because they didn't change in value?
That is very possible. All of the assessments that did change are listed on the website, and they are in road order. So you are able to go on and see if you see your road and you know, you don't see your house, you can call and check. I would not just assume because, you know, as great as our post office is,
Right, okay.
they lose things sometimes, and it's, you know, so I would not assume just because you didn't get something that it did not change. Our roll is, the full entire roll is published on June 1st or thereabouts. I run it on June 1st. That'll be available on our website for review. At that time, you can look up your assessment on there to ensure that it did not change. And I would do it close to June 1st. That way, if it did and you just didn't get a letter for some reason, you have opportunity to go to grievance still. Oh, speaking of grievance, someone did mention if the grievance day appointments fill up. I think it was your question. We cannot deny people grievance. My grievance board does not want to be here until 2 in the morning. So what we will do is if the first day fills up, we will schedule additional days to hear people. I don't want to burn them out either, so we're not going to do a 12-hour session for the grievance board. We'll do them, you know, four-hour segments typically, and it will be multiple days if need be. It is important to note your grievance forms have to be in our possession, not postmarked, in our possession by our legal grievance date. If your appointment date is 2 weeks later, you still have to have your grievance form in by our legal grievance date.
So are we supposed to set up the appointment before we get have Bruce submit the letter and we haven't heard from you on the review? Or
So-
what do we, how's this, tell me about the process. What's the
Sure.
process?
And I apologize for that. I did
Yes.
not make it clear on the
Yes.
follow-up.
Please.
So the assessment review forms that were sent out, if you've submitted one of those, you will get a follow-up notice. I'm going to run those follow-up notices as a batch on June 1st. They will be mailed out right after June 1st. You will have your decision basically from that review. If you're satisfied with the number, that will become your tentative assessment. If you are not satisfied, you still have the option to call and make an appointment for grievance. I am holding off on grievance appointments until the individuals that did that phase 1, I call it, the assessment review, have received their results, because I don't want them to, you know, they did the work, they tried to get in. I don't want you pushed to the back of the line. So we're holding off on making any grievance appointments until after that June 1st date when the follow-up notices are mailed.
So everybody's gonna get, if you submit a letter.
Yes.
And you turn it in.
Yep.
You're gonna get a letter.
You will get a letter saying it went from this to this if it changed. If it says it went from this and didn't change, you're certainly welcome to go to grievance.
Is it possible for you to put the comps you used for individual letters that went out on the letter?
Yeah, I'm sure I could do that, depending on how many we have. You know, if I have 400 of them at the end of this thing, it's going to be difficult to because you have to individually run those.
I mean, the initial letter you sent out did not include the comps you used.
No.
Could that be done?
That
in the
would
future?
that would be too much.
Like our assessments. No, kidding. Sorry, that's a bad joke. That's a
Had
joke.
to throw that in there.
That's a joke.
Tina, can you just run through the exact where the forms need to go, the format, as well as your availability so that folks know? And for those that don't know, Tina is, we talk about sharing services. She is a shared service with the city of Canandaigua, which means she spends some time over there helping their residents as well. So if you could just talk through all the
Absolutely.
pieces to make sure people understand exactly how they need to do it.
Sure. So the assessment review forms, basically the instructions on what to do is in the letter. If anybody needs clarification on any of that, please give me a call. I do answer my phone. Doesn't matter where I am, I'll answer the phone because I carry the cell all week long. So you can give me a call. I'm happy to help. I am making appointments right now. I am booked up until the 29th, so I do have some appointments available on the 29th. If you'd like to have a one-on-one appointment, get a copy of your comp sheet, you're welcome to do that. I am here on Mondays and Fridays from 8:30 until 4. Sometimes I leave for lunch, sometimes I don't. So if it's around the lunch hour, just give me a call and let me know you're coming, and I'll wait for you. So, but I'm happy to print your comp document. If you want to just pop in on a Monday or Friday, I'm happy to do that for you. I do have grievance on Friday the 29th in Canandaigua, so I have to leave a little bit early for that. Session starts at 4, so I'll probably head over there around 2, but I'll be here from 8:30 to 2 on the 29th. So you're welcome to stop in. I'm happy to print your documents and take a look at it and make sure it makes sense. Oh, and the forms. Amy said, where do you send the forms? You can drop them off at my office. You can hand them down in the town clerk's office. They'll put them in my mailbox, or you can mail them. It is important that they are to us, at least in the Dropbox, by the 25th. I'm going to be stopping on Wednesday to pick them up because I have to get them all reviewed and make the changes in order to get them on the tentative roll, which is the June 1st. I'll be running that. So I have to have everything done, completed, reviewed, and on the roll before June 1st. That's why I put the 25th.
Councilor Petropoulos.
Yeah, I just got a couple of quick
There is
questions.
a Dropbox. Just stick it in there, and she will get it on the 25th.
Yep.
Right. A couple of quick questions. First of all, I do reflect your concerns, and I'm thinking, 10, 20 years when I'm no longer here, I'd like you to be here, So that's a separate conversation. What I want to know, I got 2 buildings downtown, mixed use. The last assessment, one went up, one went down. This time they doubled. What are we comparing? Is the comparison on the website?
No.
Am I being compared to something on South Exchange which has been condemned, or something on South Main that's like 20 times more expensive to begin with?
So the answer to your question is you're not being compared to anything, because when we're talking commercial properties, we're using a valuation factor file, which uses typical rents because they're typically income producing properties when you have rental involved. My suggestion, if you have concerns with the value, is to give me a call. We'll set up an appointment and go through to make sure that I have the correct data, the correct square footage, the correct current uses. We could talk about income and expense and go through that whole thing.
And the second half is basically, is there any information on who bought what, the sales? My fear, maybe I'm paranoid, but that, the same slum people are throwing money to buy these houses up, displacing residents, and then making them rentals, jacking up rent, and before long will be feudalism all over again with like 3 people owning all the properties.
Hey, Jim, that's a very different
It
thing.
is,
And be
perhaps,
careful
but-
of that. That's,
It is all public record, though, so yes, you
It's on
can
public
find
record.
out
So
who bought
I
what.
would be able to figure out who bought and who's causing, if you will, the differences.
And if council wishes, I'm happy to do a sales report for you monthly, so that way you can
So,
see.
if you don't mind, and I'd like to close this way, and I open this with one of my beliefs and a strong belief that the failure of governance in this level was about communication and disclosure, about understanding, and that we as a government and those overseeing this government did not have the right information and were not prepared adequately with relation to this. So one of the things that I'm going to propose and present to council is that we actually adopt a formal assessment policy or policy around assessment, or a plan, as you made reference to it, whether it's a 4-year plan or a 5-year plan. Councilor Grimaldi certainly is an assessor. He gave me a lot of education with regards to this, and
Probably already, you're doing a 6-year plan, right?
It
what the
is
state requires.
projected out that long, yes.
6 years.
so the things that I would expect, and again, I'm welcome to a reaction with regard to this, is not only that we have a clear understanding, but that there's a formal, and I'm going to use the acronym here because I'm not going to read it out, but ORPTS. So that's the Office of Real Property Tax Services for New York. That there actually is a compliant reassessment plan, and that is 6 months before the assessment and before the tentative rolls. So we would see that. That would be presented to us. That you would present, or another city official would present to council an annual assessment report covering, and as you're saying and sharing this, none of us had any insight to that, right? But sharing with us the methodology, the equalization rate, ratio study results, grievance outcomes. Think of all the folks. I'd like to know what the outcomes were. Were they successful? Were they not? Why not? Or why? What are the notification thresholds? You said one neighborhood didn't get it, the other 3 did. Well, what are those thresholds? How are they set?
Yeah, so the grievance determinations, I don't know that I'm going to be able to answer that for you.
At any point in time?
I can tell you what went down and, what the board reduced. I can't tell you the why, because the deliberations themselves are done without me in the room.
So there's no formal.
The grievance board
There's no
is-
minutes during their deliberations.
Yeah.
We record the grievance hearings themselves, so it is a public meeting. So we do record, when people come in and present to the board, and anything that I give the board is all presented on record. When they go into their deliberations, that is like an executive session. I get kicked out of the room, they make their decisions, they put it on paper, that's it, that's all. I have zero involvement in that.
Yeah. The
But
Board
you
of,
share the decision with the property, the
Yeah.
owner that's grieving it, correct?
Right, so
And
what?
you don't see that?
I do see that. So at the end, because I have to make the changes. So once they make their decisions, they fill out an RP 525, which is the determination of Board of Assessment Review, what their decision was. They'll make notes on there. The chairman signs off on them, and then we put them in the mail. I get a list of all of them, and I update it in our system to match.
So Assessor Radis, I think with regard to that, is it possible on a grievance letter, if something is granted by way of a decrease, that there are categories that can be checked in terms of a reason as to why the grievance board made that decision, so you have the generic idea as to what it was that drove those up or down?
Typically, they do, they won't put too many notes on there, but they'll mark, not enough information,
Yep.
or there's Tammy, remind me, there's a couple different,
Insufficient data.
yes.
yeah,
I don't fill the form out, so.
I don't,
I guess what I'm wondering, to be precise, and again, I'd appreciate this.
wait, you want me to, you gotta understand that the Board of Review is a division of courts. So it's operating just like if you went into civil court. And I've always found that if they turn somebody down, they put a reason. If they like what you said, all I'm gonna get is a check mark that says, I'm okay with it. But once all that comes out, there is a form that, I don't know, you guys still submit it to the county? That has all the
The
changes?
certified list, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we could get a certified list that says, this is the property came in, this is how much it was before, this is how much it is now, and here's how much the change is. So I mean, you could see, did they go up, did they go down? Not too many people come into grievance saying, I want it up, and the law says they can't do it anyway. But although sometimes in informal hearings, like she's doing now, I have had people come in and want higher assessments.
I have too. It's bizarre, but
Yeah.
it happens.
But you get a couple every time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, so we could get a list of everybody that came into grievance and
Okay.
changes.
Thank you. Any other questions? I believe the questions from the public hearing were also all answered.
I don't believe mine was. I have the question, if I were to grieve by an unequal assessment, what do I use for that?
So unequal assessment, you're gonna wanna compare other assessments. So for instance, if your neighbor has a very similar house to you, similar condition, things like that, you're gonna wanna notate that this house is like cookie cutter, it's the same thing, and their assessment is $10,000 less than mine, or something like that. But you wanna make sure that what you're using, that they are very comparable,
Yeah.
because there may be differences.
You're not gonna wanna use that one. You're gonna wanna use excessive, because unequal means you have to prove that your assessment is different than everybody else in the city. And it's,
That's not true.
no, that's what the law says on that thing.
Yeah.
If
But-
you own a 1, 2, or 3 family home,
Right.
you have to compare it to others.
Yeah,
Not
but
all.
all.
No, not all. We're on a board, we know the law.
Yeah, well, I know the law too, but.
All right, so
But
let's
anyway-
not debate. Let's, Assessor, do you want to please address that?
Yeah, I would use, like you said, similar, if you have a handful of them, enough to say that it's out of whack. And I'm gonna be completely honest, the 2 and the 3 families, we have very few of them, that have sold. So it is possible that there may be, something off there. So I would definitely take a look at those, and if you have concerns, stop in and see me.
I'm probably gonna give you a call.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Honorable Mayor.
Do we have any other questions? Sorry, I hate to do it. Encore, fair market value versus, that wasn't answered either.
Yes, it was in the very beginning.
Oh, sorry.
All they do is equalize it to be 100%. So that's what that difference is.
I was trying to check them off. I didn't see yours up top because my handwriting's horrible.
What about the ones that paid well over, would they they show up in your list, the asking price, I assume the realtor knows what to put at the market price. But someone goes 50,000 over, which they did in my neighborhood, does that show up on your list?
It does not, because all I see is the total that they paid.
Right, so just because one house went for that,
But,
we're out.
but is it, we don't use one house as a comp, we use three.
Sure.
So you're gonna have three comparisons, and if they've all sold for $400,000, chances are, if they're similar to yours, yours is gonna be $400,000. So that's what we do. One sale doesn't make a market, we know that. We know these crazy bidding wars are happening. I just don't know if they were a crazy bidding war. Sometimes when people fill out the sales verification, though, they will say, I got into a bidding war, there was 25 people on this house. The bottom line is, that's what you paid for it, honestly, but you won the bid, congratulations. But if it's way out of whack, though, and they're like, they paid $1 million for something that should be $700, I'm probably gonna throw that one out.
All right. So Assessor Rados, on behalf of council, thank you for taking the time to answer these questions.
Of course.
We do appreciate it. We appreciate your demeanor, your professionalism, your approach in answering every question and offering to open your door. And by the way, keep it open, because if not, they come into my office and I get into trouble. And it's happened. That's okay, though. Look, I think in closing, with regard to this one particular component, again, we recognize and have heard those in particular who have experienced assessments that are in fact jarring and questioned, and we will continue to discuss this. This was a very much an information gathering element, and prior to the assessments being certified, which is in August, certification?
Oh, for the final roll?
Yes.
August 1st is final
August
roll.
1st, that between now and then, we will continue to look at this, and I would strongly encourage every citizen who has received a notice that feels that it is higher than it should be to put the information together and reach out to the assessor and challenge that assessment and to do so as quickly as possible.
Yes. Yeah. I don't. The goal is not to overassess anyone. That is not the goal here. We want everyone at fair market value. Again, you know your homes better than I do. I've never been in your homes. So certainly, if you have deferred maintenance, if you have something going on inside the house that I can't see from public right away, I don't know that, and we need to have that conversation. I am happy to look at photos, and my door is always open. You can give me a call anytime, or send me a text, whatever is convenient for you. I don't like text so much because sometimes I'm like, why are you yelling at me? And it's just, it wasn't really yelling. It's just somebody.
Again, thank you.
punctuation.
And with that, that will end this discussion. Okay? And we're moving in 2027 to Thursday, right?
Yep.
So the next item, we're actually moving to Thursday, and we're not going to do the attorney-client meeting because of the overrun here. So
Okay, sounds good.
I would say this in closing. Any other comments, questions? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Councilor Petropoulos, second by Councilor Gummo. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?